صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إني أفتتح الثناء بحمدك، وأنت مسدد للصواب بمنك، وأيقنت أنك أنت أرحم الراحمين في موضع العفو والرحمة، وأشد المعاقبين في موضع النكال والنقمة، وأعظم المتجبرين في موضع الكبرياء والعظمة. اللهم أذنت لي في دعائك ومسألتك، فاسمع يا سميع مدحتي، وأجب يا رحيم دعوتي، وأقل يا غفور عثرتي. فكم يا إلهي من كربة قد فرجتها، وهموم قد كشفتها، وعثرة قد أقلتها، ورحمة قد نشرتها، وحلكة بلاء قد فككتها. الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا، ولم يكن له شريك في الملك، ولم يكن له ولي من الذل، وكبره تكبيرا. الله أكبر. الحمد لله بجميع محامده كلها، على جميع نعمه كلها. الحمد لله الذي لا مضاد له في ملكه، ولا منازع له في أمره. الحمد لله الذي لا شريك له في خلقه، ولا شبيه له في عظمته. الحمد لله فاشي في خلق أمره وحمده، الظاهر بالكرم مجده، الباسط بالجود يده، الذي لا تنقص خزائنه، ولا تزيده كثرة العطاء إلا جودا وكرما. إنه هو العزيز الوهاب. اللهم إني أسألك قليلا من كثير مع حاجة به إليه عظيما، وغناك عنه قديم، وهو عندي كثير، وهو عليك سهل يسير. اللهم إن عفوك عن ذنبي، وتجاوزك عن خطيئتي، وصفحك عن ظلمي، وسترك على قبيح عملي، وحلمك عن كثير جرمي، عندما كان من خطئي وعمدي. أتمعني في أن أسألك ما لا أستوجبه منك، الذي رزقتني من رحمتك، وأريتني من قدرتك، وعرفتني من إجابتك، فصرت عدوك آمنا، وأسألك مستأنسا، لا خائفا ولا وجلا، مدلا عليك فيما قصدت فيه إليك. فإن عبت عني أتبت بجهلي عليك، ولعل الذي نعبت عني هو خير لي، لعلمك بعاقبة الأمور. فلما أرى مولا كريما أصبر على عبد لئيم منك علي، يا ربي إنك تدعوني فأولي عنك، وتتحبب إلي فلا أتبغض إليك، وتتودد إلي فلا أقبل منك، كأن لي التطول عليك، فلم يمنعك ذلك من الرحمة لي والإحسان إلي والتفضل علي بجودك وكرمك. فارحم عبدك الجاهل وجد عليه بفضل إحسانك، إنك جواد كريم. الحمد لله مالك الملك مجري الفلك مسخر الرياح فالق الإصباح ديان الدين رب العالمين. الحمد لله على حلمه بعد علمه، والحمد لله على عفوه بعد قدرته، والحمد لله على طول عناته في غضبه، وهو قادر على ما يريد. الحمد لله خالق الخلق باسط الرزق فالق الأصباح ذي الجلال والإكرام والفضل والإنعام، الذي بعض فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى تبارك وتعالى. الحمد لله الذي ليس له منازع يعادل، ولا شبيه يشاكل، ولا ظهيرا يعاضد، قهر بعزته الأعزة وتواضع لعظمته العظمى، فبلغ بقدرته ما يشاء. الحمد لله الذي يجيبني حين أنادي ويستر علي كل عورة وأنا عاصي، ويعظم النعمة علي فلا أجازي. فكم من موهبة هنيئة قد أعطاني، وعظيمة مخوفة قد كفاني، وبهجة مونقة قد أراني، فأثني عليه حامدا وأذكره مسبحا. الحمد لله الذي لا يحتك حجابه، ولا يغلق بابه، ولا يرد صائل، ولا يخيب عامل. الحمد لله الذي يؤمن الخائفين وينجي الصالحين، ويرفع المستضعفين ويضع المستكبرين، ويهلك ملوكا ويستخلف آخرين. الحمد لله قاسم الجبارين مبير الظالمين مدرك الهاربين نكال الظالمين صريخ المستصرخين موضعي حاجات الطالبين معتمد المؤمنين. الحمد لله الذي من خشيته ترعد السماء وسكانها، وترجف الأرض وعمارها، وتموج البحار ومن يسبح في غمراتها. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. الحمد لله الذي يخلق ولم يخلق
ويرزق ولا يرزق، ويطعم ولا يطعم، ويميت الأحياء ويحيي الموتى، وهو حي لا يموت، بيده الخير، وهو على كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وصفيك وحبيبك وخيرتك من خلقك، وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك، أفضل وأحسن وأجمل وأكمل وأزكى وأنمى وأطيب وأطهر وأسنى وأكثر ما صليت وباركت وترحمت وتحننت وسلمت على أحد من عبادك وأنبيائك ورسلك وصفوتك وأهل الكرامة عليك من خلقك. اللهم وصل على علي أمير المؤمنين ووصي رسول رب العالمين، عبدك ووليك وأخي رسولك على خلقك، وآيتك الكبرى والنبأ العظيم. وصل على صديقة الطاهرة فاطمة سيدة النساء العالمين، وصل على سبطي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدا شباب أهل الجنة. وصل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي، حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك، صلاة كثيرة دائمة. اللهم وصل على ولي أمرك القائم المؤمل والعدل المنتظر، وحفه بملائكتك المقربين، وأيده بروح القدس يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعله الداعي إلى كتابك والقائم بدينك، استخلفه في الأرض كما استخلفت الذين من قبله، مكن له دينه الذي ارتضيته له، أبدله من بعد خوفه أمنا، يعبدك لا يشرك بك شيئا. اللهم أعزه وأعزز به، وانصره وانتصر به، وانصره نصرا عزيزا، وافتح له فتحا يسيرا، واجعل له من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا. اللهم أظهر به دينك وسنة نبيك حتى لا يستخفي بشيء من الحق مخافة أحد من الخلق. اللهم إنا نرغب إليك في دولة كريمة تعز بها الإسلام وأهله، وتضل بها النفاق وأهله، وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك، وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم ما عرفتنا من الحق فحملنا، وما قصرنا عنه فبلغنا. اللهم المم به شأثنا، واشعب به صدعنا، وارتق به فتقنا، وكثر به قلتنا، وعزز به ذلتنا، وأغن به عائلنا، واقض به عن مغرمنا، واجبر به فقرنا، وسد به خلتنا، ويسر به عسرنا، وبيض به وجوهنا، وفك به أسرنا، وأنجه به طلبتنا، وأنجز به مواعيدنا، واستجب به دعوتنا، وعاتنا به سؤلنا، وبلغنا به من الدنيا والآخرة آمالنا، واعتنا به لما اختلف، وآتنا به فوق رغبتنا، يا خير المسؤولين وأوسع المعطين. اشف به صدورنا، واذهب به غيظ قلوبنا، واهدنا به لما اختلف فيه من الحق بإذنك، إنك تهدي من تشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. وانصرنا به على عدوك وعدونا إله الحق، آمين. اللهم إنا نشكو إليك فقد نبينا صلواتك عليه وآله، وغيبة ولينا، وكثرة عدونا، وقلة عددنا، وشدة الفتن بنا، وتظاهر الزمان علينا. فصل على محمد وآله، وأعنا على ذلك بفتح منك تعجل، وبذر تكشف، ونصر تعز، وسلطان حق تظهر، ورحمة منك تجللناها، وعافية منك تلبسناها، برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
اللهم صل على محمد.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. Just a couple of announcements, inshallah, before we invite Sayyid. Inshallah, the last two programs are going to be tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. And inshallah, for now, Eid is going to be done at Yorba Linda Park. It's going to start at 9 a.m. inshallah. And 9 a.m. is when the takbirat starts. And then after that, at 9:15, Salat al-Eid, and the sermon is going to start. And then at 10 a.m., we have a potluck as well as activities. Now, of course, there is a chance that Eid is on Tuesday. In that case, we would have to change some things around. So please keep an eye out for the email, inshallah. If that were to happen, we'll send out an email with the new details. And that's it. So please help me invite Sayyid Abbas with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Let's go. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. Thank you. وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى يوم الدين. We're talking about life skills, skills that we need in order for ourselves to be successful. If you could remind yourself, which life skills did we talk about so far? So far, we talked about some of them, about the skill of being effective and successful in society, how to approach people, how to live in harmony with them, how to live a successful social life. We talked about how to make decisions. Decision making, it's a skill. And that many times in our lives we'll be forced to take very important decisions, make very important decisions. We talked about the skill of benefiting from our youth. And we talked about how that critical age is when a person really structures themselves, becomes, who they inshallah want to in their own interpretations, in the way that they, the goals that they have. We talked about the approach of God, of the skill of approaching God, how to become close to God. We talked about that in the nights of Qadr, learning from Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, how they approach God, how they talk to God. Yesterday we talked about an important skill that many of us, we said we are working on, like myself, is the skill of anger management, how to manage our anger. And those that missed it, you can watch it. And we said that usually Sayyids sometimes don't have a good, history sometimes with this part, but it is something that we work at, and it is important because one mistake, sometimes we say one thing to one person, their entire life they'll be upset with us. God forbid, one act, and we could be, doomed for the rest of our life. Today we're going to talk about something that is scary, and that is the skill of, it's not funny, but it's the skill of how to cope with the fear of death. We talk about death, but today we're talking about the fear of death. One of the actual skills was about the skill of losing a loved one, how to cope with the loss of a loved one. This one is about how we can deal with death, because we fear death. Right now, for example, God forbid, if somebody came, they go to somebody and they tell them that they're going to die, that your life is going to be ended soon. You have a disease, there's no cure. Psychologists say naturally there are stages. That person, when he's faced with death, imminent death, not death that we know we're all going to die, no, that you're going to die like you have a month to live, or I don't know, a week to live. The first stage is what? What do you think people would do? The first thing, if somebody, God forbid, tells me that answer, I would deny. Say, no, I'm going to go see another doctor. What are you talking about? Can I see, the scans? Can I see the evidence? The first step is that there be denial. And it's scary. It is scary. 2, the second stage is what? Maybe anger. That's what psychologists say. They get angry. They get angry at life. God forbid. They get angry at God, at religion. You know, a lot of people that have left religion and became atheists, it's not the philosophical or theological aspect. It is that aspect of bad happening to them a lot of times and not being able to provide an answer as to why did this happen to me. A lot of times it's something personal. Either there's something personal or something they observe in society. It's shurur, evil. They can't understand evil. Even those that believed in evolution and started, like Darwin, he believed in God to some extent. It didn't cause, evolution for him to leave creationism, because we can say at the end, there's God-guided evolution. Even if somebody accepts it, this is God-guided evolution. Allah has a means for everything and wanted this to happen this way, for example. But when he saw different animals attack different animals and play with them when they want to, not necessarily eat them, they just were toying with them, like a cat and a mouse, something later on, not Tom and Jerry, but like something like that. But usually, in that issue, it's usually more about the cat getting abused. But anyway, so he saw this, and he's like, how could there be a God that does this? Well, because we say everything has a hikmah and purpose, and we realize that hikmah and purpose in the hereafter. Yes, if there's only this world that bala happens and there isn't a hereafter, then yes, now the bala would say this is a bad God, evil, because there's evil. But if there's another world that truly you will be made up for everything that happens in multiple times, you'll be made up what happened to us, then yes, we would say this is a good God because he's rewarding us. Let's recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So we talked about that anger happens. That person gets angry sometimes by God because they don't understand. These are incorrect. The third thing that happens, psychologists say, with imminent death, so the first was what? Denial. The second was anger. The third is bargaining. What's bargaining here? I mean, can I get, a month more to live? Is there medication for me that I can extend my life a little bit? That time, even a day is a day. That time, a week is a week for those that want to see their family. They want to do things. If they can, it depends on, what their illness is. But they try to buy and bargain as much time. The fourth stage that psychologists say is depression. Then they say, okay, it's over, Even if I have a year or 6 months or 2 months or a week, it's over. You get depressed. And finally, there's the stage of acceptance. After this entire series, then they accept that death is a reality. But from the traditions, from verses in the Holy Quran, we have been trained and taught to prepare for death, always. The Imams have always taught us to place death in front of your head, in front of your eyes. They encourage us to visit the graveyards, to know that this world is a bridge. And we're going to be talking about how powerful the Islamic interpretation of death is and how it really helps us to manage this fear. Because our prophets and our imams were the most courageous when it came to death. They were not afraid of death at all. Yes, some of their enemies or some others, when it came to the battlefields, you'd see they would run away. They were afraid of death. But the imams of Ahlul Bayt at all, even their children, Imam Hassan's children, Qasim ibn Hassan alayhi salam, he says, death to me is sweeter than honey. A child that can't even fit armor on him. And he was worried, will I be of the shuhada of Karbala or not? He was worried. So for the camp of Ahlul Bayt and the prophets, death is something that actually we have to, I'm going to explain tonight, what can we do to lose this fear? Because I gave you ourselves, that's scary situation, but it is a reality that one day we have to leave this world. Hopefully when we leave, it is with, aqabat bil khayr, but one day we will have to leave this world. So what can we do to manage this fear better? One is that we must understand death. We must understand what it is. When you do not understand something, it becomes scary. What is it? Especially, God forbid, somebody believes in annihilation. It's not annihilation for us. It's another world, a step to another world. But we're talking about that specific active incident of death. How is it? The Imams of Samarra, Imam Hassan Askari alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, ala Muhammad, mentions that قال دخل علي ibn Muhammad, his son, على مريض من أصحابه وهو يبكي ويجزع من الموت. Imam Hadi alayhi salam, in the book of Ma'ani al-Akhbar, entered a person that was dying and he was losing it. He wasn't patient. He was crying, and it is something fearful. And it is one of his, it says, ashabihi, one of his companions. So the Imam, what does he tell this person? How does he calm this person? For the first thing, he teaches him, and this is for us, فَقَالَ لَهُ يَا عَبْدَ اللَّهِ تَخَافُ مِنَ الْمَوْتِ لَأَنَّكَ لَا تَعْرِفُهُ. You are afraid of death because you do not know it, the Imam says. You don't know what death is. So the first step is to study death. If you look, actually, this is one of those topics. How many verses of Quran are about death? How many verses, hadith we have about death? It's very rich in hadith, in scripture. There's a lot of hadith you can keep reading. Some chapters when you want to give a presentation or speech, sometimes there's few hadith on some issues. But this is one of them. There's rich. You can read so many. You read so many hadith, and you come to other ones, you didn't read those yet before. So the first thing is understand death. That will help us calm down. Then the Imam gives the example of how death should be. And this is the second stage, is that our interpretation of death has to change. The way that we view death. So he says in the hadith that imagine that you are dirtied, or there's clothes that are dirtied, or you yourself are dirtied. And how nice would it be to take a shower and to clean yourself? He gives example of hammam. The Imam says in Arabic, فَذَاكَ الْمَوْتُ هُوَ ذَلِكَ الْحَمَّامِ. That death is that shower that you wash and clean yourself. وَهُوَ آخِرُ مَا بَقِيَ عَلَيْكَ مِنْ تَمْحِيصٍ. And this is the last part of purification to make you clean. So the reality of this death is that it is purification. And then the Imam continues in the hadith, فَقَدْ نَجَوْتَ مِنْ كُلِّ غَمٍ. After you pass and death comes to you, you will be saved from every type of gham, every type of grief. Grief will be over for you. No more grief. This world is a world of grief. We don't want to never complain to God about it, but that's how He created this world. When kids are born, they cry when they're born. It's natural, And every time we look at things, if you look really into it, just the world, it can be very grief. It has a lot of grief and sad. As we said about that part, half of our life is about introducing ourselves to others, learning and becoming familiar with others. The second part is bidding farewell, saying goodbye to everyone. That is grief. That is how the world is. This should make you happy because min kulla ghammin wa ham wa adha, and everything that bothered you, you're leaving. Because you are leaving a world that the reality of it is pain. There is pain in it. But you're going to another world that there is no pain anymore. Going to a pure world. In this world, you want to enjoy snacks and desserts, then they say you have, your glucose is too high, your A1Cs are this, or your cholesterol is like this. You can't have as much as you want. It's grief. It's gham. You want to enjoy it, you can. You want to eat fish, bones. A bone goes one right in here. You have to cook the fish. It smells. It stinks, right? That's just normal. This is life that you don't have khalis bounties. It's mixed. Actually, in one of the other hadith mentioning about the pains and sufferings of this world, I read in hadith, is because it is a sample that there will be pain and suffering in hell. So it's a sample of how life can be in the hereafter. And when you see the good parts of life, it's a sample of heaven. So we have samples of both in this world. That's the hikmah of it. That's the wisdom. And then it says, وَصَلْتَ إِلَى كُلِّ السُّرُورِ. The Imam, he's death, he's dying, the guy is dying. He says, كُلِّ السُّرُورِ, you're going to reach complete happiness and joy. The way he says it, the Imam, we want to, we're not afraid of it anymore. وَفَرَهٍ فَسَكَنَ الرَّجُلِ. He became calm. He became calm. He's saying, when the Imam tells you, Imam Hadi alayhi salam comes in front of you, how fortunate these people are that they died, that Imam Hadi, the Imams come to them. And therefore he stopped worrying about death. Or we have other hadith. أَعْظَمُ السُّرُورِ, the hadith says. أَعْظَمُ السُّرُورِ. The greatest joy in hadith is death. Al-maut rayhanatul mu'min. Death. Rayhana, some interpret as flower, but rayhana possibly is like something like a basil, a greenery that it smells nice. Some say flower, or like you say basil, something that smells nice. Rayhanatul maut. There's a fragrance. Al-maut rayhanatul mu'min. As a rayhana is a nice smelling thing. فَيَكُونُ آخَرَ أَلَمْ. Some of the hadith says, death is the last pain that we have. The last, no more pain, no more back pain, no more knee pain, especially if someone is old. They said that when you get old, first you say my back hurts, and my knees hurt, my neck hurts. Then when you get old, in order you say my entire body hurts. My entire body. You don't say on my back, my body. In other hadith from Imam Hussein alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad ala Muhammad wa remain firm on day of Ashura. Abi Abdullah alayhi salam, you see that for the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, death was nothing for them. There's no death management or how to not fear death. Remain firm, O sons of noble people, because death is just a bridge which will cross you and transfer you from discomforts and troubles into the extensive gardens of paradise. Death is this bridge that will take you to paradise. Other hadith, removal of clothes, like we said. Dirty clothes. Another hadith that's nice, it talks about death as being like sleep. And the hadith equates death as like that same stage as when we were asleep. The hadith says this: death is the very same sleep that comes to you every night. It's a sample of death. However, this is a sleep which is very long, and man shall not wake up until the day of judgment. A lot of people say, when you work very hard in this world, they always say, in the grave we will sleep for a very long time. You'll have a deep sleep, you can relax and sleep in the grave. Thus one who sees different types of pleasure and happiness in his sleep, over which he, in wakefulness, has no power and similarity, he sees the different types of fear-instilling things. So things he sees in his dreams are not like in this world. He sees pain. Sometimes we see things and we fear of things that we never saw those in real life. Or we have pleasures in our sleep in the same way. So the same type of sleep that we have is similar to death. Death is very same sleep which comes to you every night. However, this is a very long death. This is a very long sleep. So you see the second stage, one, understanding death, understanding the reality of it, which we said is just transfer. It's not annihilation. If it was going to be annihilation, that would be very scary. But we do not get annihilated. Our souls just go from one stage of life into a pure form of life. Two, understanding death, as we said, surur, joy, fragrance, and a last pain, or as the Imam said for him, that it would be as if somebody were to be washed and cleansed. And the third part, what we can do is the acceptance of death. This will help us. is that we have to understand that there is no running away from it. We can try to, ask Allah to have a long life, live a healthy life, increase the quality of life, but at the end, it will reach us. The Quran has قُلْ إِنَّ الْمَوْتَ الَّذِي تَفِرُّونَ مِنْهُ فَإِنَّهُ مُلَاقِيكُمْ in Surah Jumu'ah. Indeed, the death from which you flee, indeed it will meet you. A person that during the time of Prophet Sulaiman was sitting next to him. Prophet Sulaiman was one of the prophets that had much power. He had ability over the winds, over the animals. He was a very powerful prophet. And he's sitting next to Prophet Sulaiman, and he sees a person, a young person. Here it says, yes, a person comes, and he's continuously gazing at him. And he asked Prophet Sulaiman, that guy, he keeps looking at me. He won't stop looking at me. Who is he? So this is the angel of death. So I go, oh, he looks like as if he was ready to take my soul. He says, take me to a far place. And in this hadith is India. So in this narration, he takes Prophet Sulaiman, takes this person to a far distant place, to India. Later on, the next day or whatever, that person comes back, the angel of death comes to Prophet Sulaiman and says, I was looking at him, wondering how I have been commanded to take his life in India, and he was right next to you, in this kingdom. I was wondering how that is going to happen. And after that, Prophet Sulaiman, his death, he was, Imam Ali alayhi salam says, if anybody was going to be able to flee from death, it would be Prophet Sulaiman. Then death comes to him. He is leaning on his cane, and he is watching his kingdom. And then a young person comes to him, the same person, comes to him and asks him, who are you? He says, I am, have they come with the permission of God to take your soul away? The Prophet Sulaiman says, then allow me to go home to prepare for death and rest on my bed. Allow me to go home and prepare. The angel of death doesn't even give Prophet Sulaiman permission. And just as he's leaning on his cane, he takes his soul away. In such a way that he was leaning on that, the workers were still working for a long time. They thought, maybe something happened to Prophet Sulaiman, but they still thought he was alive. He was just leaning on his cane until finally the ants came and ate from the cane, the staff that he had, and his body fell, and they noticed that he was dead. So there's no escaping death. If anybody was going to escape Prophet Sulaiman, we have a hadith, Imam Ali says Prophet Sulaiman would have escaped from death. Other prophets too, they were wondering where the angel of Jibreel is, Prophet Idris. He does good to one of the angels, and he asks him, let me meet this angel of death. So he goes, the angels take him, and then he goes to somewhere between the third and fourth heaven. Prophet Idris, one of the earlier prophets after Prophet Adam. And then the angel of death was wondering too, says, I was commanded to take your life in the third and fourth heaven, sky. I was wondering, how am I going to, how are you going to come here? And I'm amazed at how you've come to meet me. Now I'm going to take your soul away, from you. Remember, never ask, to this point, moral of the story is never ask to meet angel of death. He'll come himself. You don't need to ask to meet him. So he went to ask to meet him, and his death, cost him his life at the end. That was his destiny. But for us as followers of these instructions, we have to learn to conquer death. We have to learn to be so brave that death is not something that scares us. Imam Ali alayhi salam tells Imam Hassan in letter 31, وَأَعْلَمْ يَا بُنَيَّ أَنَّكَ إِنَّمَا خُلِقْتَ لِلْآخِرَةِ لَا لِلدُّنْيَا. You have been created for the hereafter, my son, not for this world. وَلِلْفَنَاءِ وَلَا لِلْبَقَاءِ. You have been created in this world. There will be fana. Everything will be perished. Everything that you see around us is all going to be perished. Nothing is going to remain. We love baqa. We love to remain. We have inside us, all of us, a love to always exist. But that's for the hereafter. You can understand from this hadith. That's for the hereafter. Don't take that drive, that interest of baqa, of eternity, of immortality, and try to bring it in this world. Whatever you do, you'll die at the end. You have been walil maut wala lil hayat. In this world, you have been created for death. God created us, so death will occur to us, not for life. And the last thing we're going to mention, and it is more about using death and reminding ourselves of death as a tool, Both being prepared for death helps us overcome this fear. Very beautifully, Imam Hussein alayhi salam or Imam Hassan in the narration, let's say, Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Imam Hassan says, why are we reluctant to die? Why do you not want to die? Why don't we like death? And then because Imam Hassan replied, you ruined your next world and developed this one. You ruined the hereafter, but you developed this world. So naturally, you will not like to be transferred from flourishing to decline. Naturally, if you are not prepared, you don't have a good hereafter in front of you, naturally you don't want to go to that because that's destroyed. You have built this world. You like to stay at that place that you have prepared and built. If you prepare the hereafter, and we have been doing this in Shahr Ramadan, in the nights of Qadr, the nights of Ramadan, you are building your hereafter. Remember we said each prostration, each unit of prayer is like a home, is like a tree in the hereafter. When you believe in these hadith, that you for yourself have prepared a house, a beautiful place to live, wouldn't you be eager to live there for eternity and without any type of pain and punishment, with any type of gham and grief? So this part is that people are not prepared for the hereafter. If you are prepared and you're raja and you're wanting to meet God, in the Quran repetitively it talks about those that don't desire to meet God. As believers, we should be willing to meet Him. We want to meet God. Does it mean with the eyes and ears you'll see Him? No. It means with the spirit, but the barriers will be removed. Meeting will be just how salat is a meeting of God, because you're closer to God. In the hereafter, the barriers will be removed. God will speak in ways that, through the heart, through obviously not physical manners. God will speak. He will speak to some and will not speak to others. But there will be a meeting. And therefore, believers, when they love God, they worship Him. Their entire life is serving Him. Wouldn't you want to meet Him? So for us, death is that meeting. It's meeting God. It's finally, barriers are being removed, and you would see Him with the Spirit. So these are, recommendations of how to manage death. We said that, first of all, information, awareness about death. 2, the way that we view death, that it is, happiness, that it is, washing for us. It is removal of grief for us. And that 3, we talked about death as being, for us, acceptance that everyone is going to face death. And 4th, that we conquer death. And 5th, that we use death as a tool. One of the best ways to fight against the nafs and the desires, and when you look in hadith, one of the best ways to do this is by remembering death. If man, Imam Ali says, will see how speedily his death is coming toward him, he will abhor ambitions and will give up admiring the world. If you knew how fast our death is coming, you would not admire the world anymore. You would understand this world is like salt water. The more you take, the more thirsty you become. I'm telling myself this. Using death as a way to kill our shahawat, our lower desires. Using death as a way for all those haram ambitions, the material ambitions that we have, that it is as if you're churning, you're putting cool water on this fire. Because if we believe that, say, 1 year from now, we would die, we wouldn't waste our time so much in the dunya. You wouldn't waste yourself. Because I'm leaving. People that they give them that diagnosis that you're not going to live, they don't go out the next day and start trying to make a lot of money and be a successful, businessman and trying to, become a billionaire. I'm saying not that, striving in this world is bad, but in that way, when it's, desires, lower desires for me to indulge myself in the world. So when you look at the hadith, using death as a tool for us. Imam Ali alayhi salam, how beautifully he says, وَذَلِّلْ your heart, make your heart weak, humiliate your heart, بِذِكْرِ الْمَوْتِ. Make your heart submit. Make your heart submit with remembrance of death. If you have problems controlling yourself, controlling your urges, think of death all the time. Remember yourself of death. Remember where you go, wherever you are. Sometimes Allama Tabatabai, in the middle of class, he would tell people, middle of philosophy or whatever he was teaching, my students, my friends, remember, you have eternity in front of you. You have eternity in front of you. That causes us to be focused. That causes us to build the hereafter, not just to build this world. So using death as a tool, this tool that will take us and inshallah make us the best of people. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, Yabna Jundab, al-khayru kulluhu amamak. O son of Jundab, all of good is in front of you. Wa inna sharra kullahu amamak. And every evil itself, all of it is in front of you. Meaning that evil and good you've seen in this world has only been a taste, it's nothing. All of good and evil is in front of us. They will say, وَلَن تَرَى الْخَيْرُ وَالشَّرَّ إِلَّا بَعْدَ الْآخِرَةِ. And you will not see good and evil until the hereafter. So therefore, for us to manage death, we talked about understanding what it is and learning that this world is for us, as Prophet Isa alayhi salam mentions. Imam Ali also has hadith, it is a bridge for us. Death is just a bridge to transfer from one life to the other. And the way that when we are prepared, our hereafter is built, then you will wish that you're not afraid of death anymore. When you love God and you want to meet Him, you will not be afraid as death anymore. And this has been the way of the prophets. Let's recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. If we can dim the lights a little bit. One of the best ways to change ourselves, to connect to God, and to become a good person is remembering Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Because whatever good we talk about, they incorporated it. They are asl kull khair. They are all of good. They are the source of khair. They are the branch of khair. They are the implementation of good. When you talk about death, you see how Imam Hussein alayhi salam was so brave. How the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, how they feared an imminent death. Did they become angry? Did they become afraid? Did they deny death? No. They conquered death. They conquered death. But how? Through the love of Hussein ibn Ali. Imam Hussein, their master, grabbed their hand and took them. That is the power of Imam Hussein. That is the power of Ahlul Bayt. And that is why we need to mention them. We need to cry for them. Because this is the best way for us to become good. This is, when you talk about being courageous, when you talk about Sayyid al-Shuhada, and you talk about his great sacrifice on the day of Ashura, how can a small group of people fight against 10,000? How can even, we said, Qasim ibn Hassan alayhi salam, Abdullah ibn al-Hassan, children, that armor would not hold on to their bodies. That Lady Zainab alayhi salam would come and grab Abdullah that he wouldn't run into the battlefield, but they wanted to face death. They said, these two brothers, death is sweeter for us than honey. But what happened to Abdullah, the son of Imam Hassan? These children, they were small, but they were not afraid of death. They came to strike Abi Abdullah, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and Abdullah, the reminder of Imam Hassan. You know, Imam Hassan alayhi salam is so Muslim. The way his sons become martyred is also very Muslim. The way Imam Hassan was buried and arrows hit his body was very Muslim. And the way that Abdullah and Qasim came to Karbala was very Muslim. The way his grave is today when we talk about Imam Hassan, even his children, the children of children have a shrine, but Imam Hassan alayhi salam does not have a shrine. His shrine is destroyed. Abdullah they're coming to hit Imam Hussein alayhi salam, but they face death, these children. And he brings his arm to block Imam Hussein alayhi salam from being hit and injured. He becomes the shield of Imam Hussein. And on the day of Karbala, only a few people actually gave life in the lap, in the chest of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. One was Ali Asghar. He gave life when he was embraced by Imam Hussein next to the chest of Imam Hussein. The other was Abdullah ibn al-Hassan. After he is hit with the sword, he is hearing his final last heartbeats of Imam Hussein through his ears. And they strike him while he's being comforted by his uncle. They strike him. And for him, Abdullah ibn Hassan, he becomes a shaheed of Karbala at such a young age. Ya Allah, we ask you, because of the honor of these names, these heroes that we have, because of Imam Hussein that stood up against oppression, and today is Friday, the day of Quds, the day that we remember the oppression of our Palestinian brothers. Ya Allah, because of, say, the Shuhada, inshallah, give victory to our Palestinian brothers, inshallah, when they face oppression. Ya Allah, we ask you to eliminate oppression through the entire world, in Afghanistan, in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, in America, all over the world, inshallah, because of Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salam. Ya Allah, we ask you, when death comes and it's our time, to allow our last action to be our best action, inshallah. To allow us to have husnul aghaba, a good end to our lives. Give our children, our children's children, husnul aghaba, inshallah. Ya Allah, we ask you that when death comes to us, our sins will be forgiven, inshallah. We will not have any more sins. Ya Allah, we ask you in the last days in Shahr Ramadan to allow us to worship you, to cleanse our sins, inshallah. Allow us to benefit from this month of Ramadan, inshallah, the last part of it. If you have not freed us from the hellfire, free us now from the hellfire, Ya Allah, bihaqqa Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salam. Ya Allah, bless the family members, those that have passed away during this time, inshallah. Ya Allah, those that are sick, give them a speedy shafa, inshallah. Expedite the return of the Imam of the age. Allow us to see his holy face. Allow us to see his perfect government, inshallah, in our lifetime. And expedite his return with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Let's wrap up with Ziyarat Warith, inshallah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله. السلام عليك يا وارث نوح نبي الله. السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله. السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله. السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله. السلام عليك يا وارث وارث محمد حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا وارث أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى. السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مدلهمات ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين. وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الهادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبإيابكم موقن بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي، وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. بأبي أنت وأمي يا ابن رسول الله، بأبي أنت وأمي يا أبا عبد الله. لقد عظمت الرزية وجلت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل السماوات والأرض. فلعن الله أمة أسرجت وألجمت وتهيأت لقتالك. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، قصدت حرمك وأتيت إلى مشهدك. أسأل الله بالشأن الذي لك عنده وبالمحل الذي لك لدي أن يصلي على محمد وآل محمد، وأن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة. صلوات.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. May Allah bless you on this night. And also, we would love to see you, inshallah,